We're talking about hashtag struggles, following Jesus in a selfie-centered world. And what's interesting is to recognize that selfies are a relatively new phenomenon. In fact, when I was growing up, there is nobody that would have turned a camera on themselves to take a picture. We didn't like taking pictures of ourselves, but yet today we live in a selfie-obsessed culture. In fact, I remember growing up, going to school, the worst day of the year for me was picture day because we hated having our pictures taken. Basically, we had one shot to get one picture that defined our one grade or year that we're in, and it was totally freaky on picture day. Now, here we are decades later, and we live in a totally and completely selfie-obsessed world. You take a selfie of yourself, you put the exact right filter on it to make you look just the way you want to look, and then you work hard to get the perfect caption that will not only attract attention, but get you the most likes. What we're trying to do is show the world the me that I want them to see. Speaking of selfies, I got to grab a couple real quick. The cool selfie. There's the surprised laughy face selfie. And then the contemplative, I'm not really taking this picture of myself, but I am selfie. That one needs a lot of work, but we'll go with it. Anyway, if I put on the right filter, then it might be acceptable. And here's what ends up happening. We filter our lives and filter our lives and filter our lives, and the more filtered our lives become, guess what? The less authentic we are. The more filtered our lives become, the less authentic we are. One day we wake up and have all sorts of other struggles and don't know why. One of them is that people all over the world today actually fear and avoid unfiltered communication. They're afraid of unfiltered communication. Why? Well, so many of us, we're accustomed to being able to edit what we say. In other words, if I'm texting, I can change it and make it the way I want it. Or we edit and show our best self. We take the picture again and again and again until we get it right, and then we put a filter on it. The reality is now so many people are afraid to have a conversation in real time because that conversation can't be edited. In fact, you may even recognize yourself doing this. Someone calls you, you see who it is, you decide to send it straight to voicemail, you listen to the voicemail, and then what do? You respond with a text. Talking takes too much effort, takes too much time. Who knows where the conversation is going to go, so you stay in control with the text. In fact, I've talked to a lot of great young adults who say they get really, really anxious even thinking about calling someone they don't know because they have no idea where their conversation is going to go, the result of the filtered life. Well, this problem isn't just a modern one. In fact, 2 Corinthians chapter 3 in the Bible reflects on Exodus 34, a story in the Old Testament, when Moses went to Mount Sinai to receive the 10 Commandments. If you don't know the story, he came off the mountain and his face was glowing. So he put on a veil. I always thought this was probably to protect the others from seeing the glowing. But in the New Testament, Paul actually implies that part of the reason Moses wore the veil was because the glory was fading. This is what he said. He said, "We are not like Moses, who wanted to put a veil over his face to prevent the Israelites from seeing the end of what was passing away." He said, we're not like Moses. Moses put the veil on to keep them from seeing what was fading away. So if you think about it, Paul was implying that Moses covered himself with a veil not to protect them from seeing the glory, but why? Because the glory was fading away. Here's a really important question I want to ask you to ask yourself, and it's a great question to discuss. What veil are you wearing? What veil are you wearing? And what area of your life are you showing the world some me that you want them to see instead of the me that you really are? Let's be honest, so many of us do it in so many different ways. It could be you show them, hey, here's spiritual self. Here's me reading my Bible with my coffee, look how holy I am, when the reality is you're having spiritual doubts or there's something really bad going on in your life that's sinful, but yet you show them spiritual you instead of what's really going on. It might be that you show with it mom, look how I've got it all together. Look at my kids, they're matching and I just baked home goodies or whatever. But the truth is you are massively overwhelmed and you feel frustrated all the time. Maybe you're the dad who says, hey, look, here I am with my kids in the park. I'm a great dad, right? But the truth is you feel guilty because you're working too much. And even when you're with your kids, you're not really with your kids because your mind is somewhere else. It could be you show yourself with your protein shake. Look, I'm getting in shape. But the truth is you just ate a whole bag of chips and a gallon of Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Maybe it's the obligatory anniversary picture. You know you don't feel that close to your spouse, but you're like, hey, look at us. We're in love all these years. In fact, I've actually talked to people who've been honest enough to admit that they try to think of doing things that are Instagram worthy or social media worthy. In other words, they're living their life to try to create a social media moment. It's crazy to think about it, but that's the world we live in. Well, Paul said this in 2 Corinthians 3:15. He said, even to this day, when Moses is read, a veil covers their hearts. A veil covers their hearts. I'd say it this way. A veil that covers the face eventually covers the heart. Think about it. What started out as a superficial covering became a spiritual condition. And here we are today with the very same problem going on. A veil that covered the face, showing the me I wanted you to see, is now covering the heart. And we've literally got so many people who simply don't know how to open up. Why? Because we're so used to showing the fake self that some of us, we don't even know who the real self is. What do? Picture, filter, caption. Did anybody like it? Did anybody like it? Did anybody like it? And we wake up one day, and what's going on? We're living for likes, while at the same time longing for love. Think about that. We are living for likes, while longing for love. What's the big challenge? The truth is, we don't understand often what brings connection. You see, we may impress people with our strengths, but we connect with people through our weaknesses. Think about it. We may impress people with our strengths, but we connect with people through our weaknesses. So many of us, we're just showing the strengths, we're not showing who we really are, and therefore we're really not connecting. What are some suggestions? Well, be yourself. Show yourself. If you're so obsessed with your likes and your followers, maybe you need to take a social media break. Maybe challenge yourself not to use filters or show yourself with no makeup or a bad hair day. Don't just show who you want others to see, but be who you actually are. And then recognize this has been a problem for centuries, but there is good news. And the good news is this: Christ can remove the veil. Christ can remove the veil. When you recognize, yes, honestly, I'm showing the me I want everyone else to see. The good news is Jesus Christ can remove the veil. 2 Corinthians 3:16 says this, and I love it. But anyone who turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. And maybe that's what you need to do today, is to turn to God. Instead of turning to everyone else for approval or for your identity, you turn to God, and suddenly your identity is not in likes, but in His love. Your identity is not in what other people think about you, but in what He thinks about you. And one day you wake up and you recognize, I'm not focused about who's following me. Why? Because I'm following Him. I'm not obsessed about what other people think about me because I'm obsessed with what He thinks about me. And our identity is not in other people's likes, but our identity is in His love. Suddenly, we're not focusing on who's following us. We're focusing on following Him. 2 Corinthians 3:17 and 18 says, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And we all who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory are being transformed into His image with ever-increasing glory, with unveiled faces, what do? We contemplate the Lord's glory, who He is, what He's done. Because where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom.